There's an app that's just being introduced by prominent app builders that puts the focus back into the music while offering a competitive monetization system. And its target audience is indie musicians. There's a partnership brewing that just might make ACX quake in its boots. And a legendary filmmaker has left us, but not before leaving his indelible mark on the next generation of indie filmmakers. Plus, we meet two fantasy fiends, get what's new over at a Novel Connection, and get JB Taylor's from Taylor Talks Netflix pick of the week. All that and more, right here, right now, on This Week in Indies. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another This Week in Indies. I'm your host, Joe Compton. I came across an article in a economics magazine, of all places, that was talking about a new app that has been beta testing for the better part of a year called STEM. And it is a music-based app. And its goal is to automate a process for artists and musicians and management teams where they can put their artists on the app and then select the streams of revenue that they want to capture. So it allows you to focus on making the music and putting it out there, but putting it out there in places where you can maximize and capitalize on monetization. And this app was created by three very prominent people in the industry who were kind of looking for a way to get unknown artists seen. So they were really focusing on the independent circuit. They had, during their beta test run, they selected 12 musicians, handpicked them. They were all indie artists. None of them were signed up to a major label, and they ran them out there and used the app and worked out the bugs and created this effectiveness. Now, that being said, you do have to apply to be a musician represented by STEM, but it is something that is a very easy process to go through. It's a little form. I just went on their website and checked it out. They have opportunities, and they're looking for mid-tier starting indie artists. They're looking to really get the indie musician who is not well-known out there and seen, and give them an opportunity to make some money while creating their art. And it's a very, very nice service. I thought it was very, very easy to navigate, and I'm not a musician, and I went through the process and looked at it, and it's very easy on their website, which I'll post the link to as well. And they also have a blog on there which talks about their experiences, and it actually goes through a lot of the bugs and the things that they found while doing this process, which I thought was just amazing to read. I mean, you don't see that kind of forthcoming in many applications like this, and it helps you. You know, there are others out there like CD Baby and Cobalt, but the difference with this app is it really wants to focus on the indie artists and get the indie artist from that lower level to that next level. That's their major focus here. So they are out there actively looking for artists. What do you have to lose if you're a musician out there trying to make it? I mean, you could do all this processing on your own, but this service really gives you an opportunity to do what you do best, which is focus on the music and the craft at hand. So the other story that caught my attention this week was a story about Draft2Digital partnering with FIndaway Voices and allowing their digital platform to expand into audio booking. And this is a great thing for the industry. It's a great thing for indies, because what it's going to do is it's going to provide competition. And the way that they're going about this is very, very smart. So Kevin Tomlinson of Draft2Digital's digital marketing had this to say about the partnership. The ability to control pricing gives authors several advantages. They are effectively determining how much they'll be paid per book rather than having an amount dictated to them. But being able to set a lower price means that authors can attract new readers who might be more willing to take a risk on an untried author if the audiobook only costs a few dollars. The credit model is bad for authors and readers alike. Readers end up limited to only a couple books per month because that's all they have credits for, and they won't use those credits for shorter books because they worry about wasting them. Authors in turns can't sell shorter works on Audible because they're forced to bundle them into collections that are price controlled without their input. This reduces the amount of revenue an author can earn. Our partnership with FIndaway Voices gives authors a way to package their shorter works, particularly serialized stories, nonfiction articles, or novellas, and attract an audience with a better price point. So that's awesome, and it's one of the two things I found frustrating about ACX. My audiobook is on Audible through ACX. I did everything through ACX, and that was the price point was a real big thing for me. I couldn't believe I couldn't do anything about that. The other thing was, of course, the fact that if you sign through ACX you are held to Audible and Audible only. You can't distribute past that because you're working with an ACX producer, so they have an exclusive agreement with Audible to work, and that's why they've been hired to do what they do. The process was amazing, and it was a great learning experience, and I think ACX is really the leader in that idea, and they're really the leader in helping indies get seen. But I do too find what Draft to Digital is saying about that. The price point is really hurting my personal sales because, my book is not exactly 400, 500 pages. It's only 200 and some odd pages. I think it's 262 if I'm not mistaken. And thus, a lot of people if they're not into that type of fiction, they're going to be very selective about what they read because they only have a certain amount of credits, like this article said. And I think that I'm finding that a lot. But I will say this is something that is worth checking out, and definitely read the finer print because, while this sounds great in principle, the idea of their distribution network may be a little skewed. You have companies out there like Smashwords and Ingram who are very, very good at producing ebooks, and I've heard of Draft to Digital. I haven't explored them as deeply until I looked at this article, but their model seems very similar to those of Smashwords and Ingram, with a little bit more caveat toward the business side of it. Smashwords is all about producing the art and letting the art come out, and there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with Smashwords. But what I do find is that those sites tend to not have opportunities to market through them and with them, and it's very tough to get the word out through what they're trying to do. And so that's the only cautionary thing I would say about this. Now, they can put your books on Audible as well at the price point that you set, and I think the customization process of this is very, very intriguing and very amazing. And I'm wondering who they choose to get producers if you have to do that on your own. I haven't gone through it all that much. That's another concern of mine because a lot of people don't want to read their own book. They want somebody to read it for them, and they have a specific voice or a specific idea of the voice in their head. And so, but for those of you who have a little bit more invested control in what you're trying to do and put out there, this might be a very, very good idea for you. But like I said, just make sure that you read the fine print, look at their distribution model, because that's going to be important. Because if they're not promoting you, if they're burying you on a page in a site that has millions and millions of books, and they're not giving you anything that will help you get the word out. I mean, Amazon is you can say a lot of things about Amazon, and they do bury books too, but they have ways that you can produce through them marketing, and the other sites don't, and I think that's the difference. And that's just because they're not a big enough company; they don't have that range to do that. And I think that this is something that you have to be very cautious about. So, that being said, it's a great thing for the industry. I hope that it succeeds, and I hope to see it really do well. And I hope that if some of you try it, that you let us know in the comments below. Also, let us know what you think about the idea. Do you think that there's room for competition? Are you looking forward to having competition and legitimate competition? I think that that's only good for the industry. More revenue sources, more avenues to be successful, I think, are always going to lead to a bigger road of success. And I just think that's logical. But that being said, I have some friends to introduce you to this week as well. We're going to start on the podcast side of things. I have a couple of fantasy fiends to introduce you to who are doing one of the most original, unique podcasts I've seen, and they're very, very good. Their chemistry is undeniable. Even during this interview and talking to them before and after the interview, it was still very palatable and very amazing. So I definitely think if you haven't checked out their podcast after this little vignette, I hope that you will. And we're going to hear from my friend C. Pentecoff with some new releases over there and a novel connection, and JB Taylor, who's got a great Netflix pick for this week. I'm here with Stevie and Andy. They are the Fantasy Fiends, and they do a podcast. And guys, tell us about your podcast and what can audiences expect, and why is it different from other fantasy podcasts that are out there?
Oh.
Did you mean to say, Joe, why is it the greatest thing ever? I heard you thinking that. I didn't.
Oh, wow.
The Fantasy Fiends podcast was basically started because both Stevie and I are huge fantasy nerds. We may not look like it, but we totally are geeks to the core. So we love talking fantasy. We actually met through an Ask Me Anything live I did on Reddit, and Stevie emailed me and we started chatting and stuff, and he was like, we should totally start a podcast because we have a lot of the same things that we think and believe in, right? So it was perfect. And I had so much fun doing the live readings of my books and other authors' books in my Facebook group. I was like, okay, we totally have to do that. So that's my favorite part of the whole podcast, is having our guest authors. They send us a snippet from the book. It's 1,000 words, 2,000 words. And we spend about 10, 20 minutes just doing it. And of course, pulling out our awesome, horrible accents to do it. It's so much fun for me.
That was a direct attack on me because Andy has a perfect accents. I know you, man. You're just trying to mess with me on somebody else's. You know what? I'll get you next podcast. I'm not going to ruin Joe's. Anyway, I also bring the comedy and the handsome beard face. I started the beard Andy started the beard thing. I followed along on that. But another reason why Andy and I got together and get along so well and make this podcast so awesome is that we both love killing a lot of characters in the most goriest of ways and in the darkest of ways. So we usually really love to talk about dark fantasy and stuff like that. We also, what makes our podcast different is that, like what Andy said, we do these readings, but we really get into them. I mean, I didn't know Andy liked acting. You did theater, right, Andy?
I had zero. I had a little bit of theater.
Oh, okay.
My English teacher was just a bit of a nut, so we kind of did science and theater.
Well, I did a lot of theater, so.
You don't know this, Stevie, but on my show, he proclaimed himself as a huge introvert. I couldn't believe it.
Are you serious?
Yeah,
Totally am.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sure. The 9-foot introvert, that must suck.
That's another thing you can expect from the Fantasy Fiends podcast, is every time Stevie introduces me as the giant, I get bigger. I think at this last one I was 9'4".
I tried 11 feet, but you made me bring it down.
In a couple of weeks, we'll get to 11 feet. And so it's actually been the running joke is I'm the giant at 6'6", and Stevie's the gnome at 5'4.5".
Do you guys talk about what's going on in the fantasy world in terms of like pop culture and stuff like that, or is it solely focused on the authorship and the author that you're talking to?
Actually, the discussion part is another one of my favorite parts. Is that instead of focusing so much on the business side of things or the writing side of things, we like to delve into like the human aspect. For example, the last time that our last podcast was about religion, about how reading fantasy books could actually enhance and enrich a spiritual life. Whereas a podcast we did a few weeks ago was, is fantasy with their many gods anti-religious? So we get to talk religion and politics and sex and all the, the taboo subjects. And of course it's all related to the stories that we're reading about or the authors that they've written, but we have these discussions that you won't find elsewhere.
And the first 5 minutes of the show, we do point towards, we call banter, and we'll talk, Game of Thrones. A big thing for our show is the King Arthur movie. We talked heavily about that without giving away spoilers. So we do talk the pop culture side of fantasy as well.
When is the podcast? And you guys are live, correct? You guys shoot live.
Yeah, we do Thursday nights at 5:30 Pacific time, 7:30 Central, and 8:30 Eastern.
Because we've learned that every podcast we do is perfect and there's nothing ever wrong with it. And, so we just like to do it live because we're perfectionists and everything we do is amazing.
Congratulations.
Thanks for having us,
guys. And I hope everybody goes checks you out.
Joe, thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
Hello, my name is author C. Pentakoff, fantasy author and owner and founder of A Novel Connection. I will be dropping by every week for Weekend Indies just for a couple minutes to tell you about our new releases. So our first new release is in our Reader Connection, a young adult fantasy book titled Illusional Reality. Ooh. Their one-liner is, "Step out of reality and into illusion." Sounds really cool. In this book, you'll travel with Becky into an unknown magical land where she'll learn that she isn't who she thought she was. That's all I'm going to tell you for now. If you want to read this book, go to www.anovelconnection.com/illusionalreality. Okay, our next new book is also in the Reader Connection, and it is also in the sci-fi, fantasy, and young adult section. It is called Dreamwalker by Michelle Murray. Their one-liner for the book is, "Enter Mystica with Miranda." Come along with Miranda, the Dreamwalker, as she travels through Mystica to save the white wizards from their stone prisons. That sounds so interesting. I can't wait to read it. If you want to read this book, go to www.anovelconnection.com/dreamwalker. Our final new release for the week can be found in our Kitty Connection. This is called Wolf's Wishing Well. Super cute book, by the way. Your kids will love this book. This book is written by Anita Kelly Grant. Okay. And it says, read about an impatient wolf who wants nothing more than a white winter wonderland in the heat of summer. And this book is super cute, like I said, but what really popped out to me was that and I'll show you a couple images to see what I'm talking about. But if you look at the wolf, it's super interesting. The wolf's fur, I guess, looks like newspaper writing. Very unique, very interesting, and I really loved it. If you want to read this book or download this book for your kid, you want to go to www.anovelconnection.com/Wolf's Wishing Well. Of course, you got to be a subscribed reader to be able to read any of these books. So make sure you go to www.anovelconnection.com/subscribe. Choose whether you want to subscribe under the Reader Connection or the Kitty Connection. $1.99 per month, unlimited downloads, and we get new books every Wednesday. And, of course, don't forget to go indie now. Now! Right now!
Last week, I recommended a deliciously nerdy comedy, Knights of Badassdom. This week, I'm recommending a docudrama called Quiz Show. This film centers around a 1950s game show called 21. This story centers around two people, Charles Van Doren and Herbie Stempel. Herbie Stempel gets his 15 minutes of fame by appearing on 21 and being a success. But he's not really telegenic, meaning he's not exactly handsome. And the network decides that they want to put someone on who's more handsome. And so they give him the boot. Now, this rubs him the wrong way, and rightly so. And so he drops a bombshell, citing to everyone who will listen that the show is rigged, that he was given all the answers. This prompts an investigation, and what unfolds is dramatic and revealing. It shows that the era of America that's supposed to be, you know, mom's apple pie, everyone's a golden boy, isn't really true. We know this, but at the same time, back then, you thought that if there's one thing safe from greed and safe from arrogance and stupidity and douchiness, it's game shows. You know, everyone sat down with the family, either turned on the radio or turned on the TV, and they watched a game show. So this was quite a bombshell. And to make it all the more crazy, Charles Van Doren, who takes his place and is subsequently given the answers, he's a professor. He's very intelligent. He could have come on that show without being given the answers and did just fine for himself. He shamed his family. He disgraced his college. I mean, he pulled America in and just slapped them in the face. The acting is brilliant. The writing, which is based on a book that congressional investigator Dick Goodwin, played by Romero, wrote. So if you're into docudramas, if you're into true stories that are actually based on true stories, then check this film out. It was just a really, really good film. So that's my Netflix pick of the week. Back to you, Joe.
As Geritol presents 21. Growing up, one of my fondest memories was hanging out Saturday night with all my friends. We'd have a slumber party at my house or somebody else's house, but we would get together and we would watch Headbangers Ball, and then after Headbangers Ball we would pile a bunch of movies together and watch them until we all fell asleep. And oftentimes that became a horror movie night, and within the horror movie night, oftentimes more than not, we would be watching Night of the Living Dead. And of course, this week we unfortunately lost George A. Romero. Who is the creator of the Living Dead series. George A. is an indie pioneer. He was a maverick filmmaker who did it his way and didn't make any apologies. And he was somebody who really, beyond just making these movies and creating the zombie subgenre that now we are inundated with and has been blasting through our lexicon. I mean, we have so many movies, books, TV shows that we can't get away from now because of the zombie genre per se. But George A. did it with such class and did it with such an amazing ideology behind him. And one of the great things about George is that he was so giving to the community. He was so free and open. And in a time when, it was almost like being a magician, a filmmaker was. In the late 70s, early 80s, you didn't want other people to become filmmakers. You wanted to hold it for yourself because there were so few jobs. And if you were being hired to do something, you were out there and you would instantly be able to do whatever you wanted to do. And that's a tough thing to go through a studio system and try to get them to believe in you. So once they did, they never let you go. And so a lot of filmmakers felt like that was something they had to keep close to the vest, how, it was almost like a magic formula or magic beans to a certain extent. But George was never like that. From early on, you can go back to when Night of the Living Dead first came out. He was very open about the process. He was very open about teaching the process. He was very open about being available to people to learn the craft. And there's this great article on a film school website that I found. He teaches 9 simple things you can do to, as a young filmmaker, to make yourself better. One of the tips he offers right off the bat is shoot it. And that is, go out there and shoot your own stuff. Have an idea. Let it fly. See what happens. Put it out there. Put it onto film. And instead of saying, hey, I can do this, show people you can do this. He also mentions about collaborating, which I think is probably made me the most happy to read. I think that put a big smile on my face when he talked about collaboration, because this art form has so many variables to it. It has a lot of moving parts and a lot of people involved in helping you make a successful movie. And in most cases, in the independent world, you're doing more than one thing. So somebody is responsible for a couple things that have to happen. So it makes it even more immensely important that you have people around you that you can collaborate with, that you can trust, that have your best interest in creating the process. And respecting what they do is a big part of being a good collaborator. I can't be a key grip. I don't know the first thing about electricity. I don't know the first thing about lighting to only what looks good to my eye. I don't know how to get the shadow. I mean, I know a little bit about it now, having made some movies, but when I first started, I didn't have that concept. We just played around, and luckily I had somebody who was very versed in lighting eventually that helped figure it out and show us. Sound is another big deal. You have to respect the audio process because that is a big part of what makes your film successful. I mean, every little thing matters. And so having those people around you that you can collaborate with, that you can work with and learn from. Another key element in his 9 steps was also work on somebody else's project. Start by working on other people's work. Be a part of another film, but don't, not necessarily where you're the director or producer, but you're just a PA or you're doing something that you can do. Like I did a script supervising for a few films when I was doing indie films. And I was something I really liked to do, and I found I was pretty decent at it, and it allowed me an opportunity to see the filmmaking process from a whole different angle. I took acting classes, so that allowed me to see that process. And the more you can gather, the more you can see in your peripheral, because sometimes when you're a director or producer, you're solely focused on making the engine run, or you're really concentrating on this, or you have to work with the actor, or you have to work with the camera crew. You don't have time you usually delegate those responsibilities, so you don't have time to know where the cabling needs to go for this shot. You usually delegate that to the DP, who then runs that show. Sometimes it's the DP himself who does it and just tells you, let me handle it, I'll do it. And you trust the DP, so you let him do that. But those are the kind of things that you see from the outside if you're watching and you're just observing and being a part of that. You're still part of the movie, but you're also getting an opportunity to see a lot of things you wouldn't normally see. I definitely recommend Googling or going on YouTube even and just typing in George A. Romero. You're going to come up with a ton of interviews. He did a ton of press, and he was so gracious in his time He's a very animated guy, very passionate, and that you can't but help appreciate that. I think George A. always felt like that he had a community of people that he trusted and he brought to the forefront, and he wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same page, and it really helped him get through some dark times. He talks about it a lot in his book, actually. And I think that's really, really amazing and important, and he's always been somebody that I've really, truly admired for those reasons. And of course, he made a masterpiece as well in The Night of the Living Dead. And if you haven't seen The Night of the Living Dead, the original 1970, I believe it's 79, maybe 76, somewhere in between there. Actually, I think it is 79. But if you haven't seen that movie, do yourself a favor, go check it out. After you, of course, check out J.B. Taylor's pick of Netflix. I think Night of the Living Dead is actually on Netflix. But go check out JB's first, because JB has a great movie for us this week, and every week, in fact. But that is, something that I always will appreciate about George A. Romero, and he'll be sorely missed. And thank you for everything that you've done, sir. You've helped me as an indie for sure, and I know I'm not alone. All right, everybody. Well, that's all the time we have this week. We'll see you again next week, along with next week being the last week of the month. That, of course, means that on Friday the 28th, we will be debuting our very next episode of our flagship show, which is, of course, It's Time to Go Indie Now. And the day before that, of course, another This Week in Indies. However, there will not be a Sunday Funday tag on the 30th. That will not happen. I am actually going to be going on a little sabbatical with my wife, have a little me time that weekend. So we're going to celebrate my anniversary. So that's what we're going to do. And so there will not be a Sunday Fun tag. There will be one this Sunday, though, so you can glom onto that, and gives you 2 weeks to do that one. Hopefully you're going through them and finding ones you like and taking notes and going ahead and doing them. I hope that you get the time to do those, and they're always there on our YouTube channel, so feel free to grab one and take a stab at it. I love that. I would love to see more of you try it. So if you're just starting a YouTube channel, it's a great way to start your YouTube channel. It's a great way to get people to get views, instant subscribers. Do these tags. They're a lot of fun. Create your own tags, I just saw one by one of GoIndieNow's great contributors, Jason Greensides, which I thought was really, really clever. So, but get out there and do those tags. If you're starting in the YouTube arena, like I said, that's a great way to do it. All right. We'll see you next time, everybody. Remember, it's always time to go indie now.